This is a show with no particular niche, baby. It's always about hanging out. Maybe we'll laugh at some stuff, maybe we'll learn something new, but it's always about hanging out, me and you. Hi, hello, and welcome to That Thing with James, a podcast about nothing in particular. I'm your host, James. What's up? How's it going? So I missed a week. I missed a week because, I record this podcast about usually 5 days, but today a week in advance of its release, of a new episode's release. However, so on the day, what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is I missed a week that I would normally record on because I was visiting my parents. And during that visit, tricked my father, my 80-year-old father, into watching Old Boy with me, the original Korean version. And he had never seen Old Boy before. He watches a lot of Korean shows, and he knew that Old Boy is one of my favorite movies. And so we watched it together, and he thought it was just going to be, your average cool action revenge story. And if you've seen Old Boy, then you know what I'm insinuating here. By the end, he clearly loved it, but he said, I hate it. I hate it. I hated it. And then afterwards, so it was just me and him watching. And then afterwards, my mom was like, how was the movie? And my dad was like, I hated it. And she was like, why? And he said, it was just a girly movie. I thought it was going to be something else, but it turned out to just be some girly movie. And I said, it's about a father and daughter who get separated for a long time, and then they reconnect. And the whole movie is just about them sort of, deepening their connections. And I bit the inside of my cheek, trying not to laugh. I hope she falls into the trap too. I want her to experience that as well, because I can remember my first time watching Old Boy. My jaw hit the floor. I think it must have been 2014. I think it was about 2014. I was home alone. I was living in Austin at the time, and my roommate was out of town, I think. So it was just me up around midnight, eating some late night ramen, putting on this movie I had heard about a little bit. Maybe I'd heard the name once or something. I checked it out and I was like, oh my God, this is one of the wildest movies I'd ever seen up to that point. So that's why there's a lapse in weeks of release. But to make up for it, I have this episode coming out on the day it's coming out. So now when you're watching and or hearing this, and then next week another one will come out. So to make up for the missing week, I'm doing 2 consecutive weeks of episodes. So today, what we're going to talk about is something that's been on my mind lately, and it's actually been on my mind for a long time. It's a little thing called string theory. But before we get into that, some quick business. If you want access to the bounty of bonus episodes of this podcast, you can get access to them by supporting the show at patreon.com/thatthingwithjames. That's patreon.com/thatthingwithjames. The entry, $5. Only $5 will get you access, 30 days of access to all bonus episodes. I think we're past, let me see. Yeah, we're past the 90 episode mark in terms of bonus episodes. So there's a lot. $5 gets you 30 days access. And if you want some extra perks to go along with it, you can check out the other tiers and the perks that go along with those. But either way, help support the show, get access to lots of bonus stuff at patreon.com/ThatThingWithJames. And then my socials, my subreddit, and the show email, those things, the addresses, the usernames are written in the episode description. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, it should appear at the Chiron at the bottom of the screen, the little bar, the Chiron. And while you're there, if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I've got more than just this podcast on there. So yeah, that's all the business. Let's get into string theory. So it's been on my mind in particular, let's see, at the time of this recording, right now, it's currently Friday, March 15th. I usually record on a Sunday, but this Sunday is St. Patrick's Day, and I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to a St. Patrick's Day block party. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm giving myself some weekend leeway to have fun and possibly nurse a hangover. Probably not, though, because I don't feel like paying for rideshare service, because those are expensive, for me at least. So what was I getting at? Yeah, Three Body Problem is a book I've not read. It's a Chinese sci-fi book, and it's the first book in a trilogy that deals with this three-body problem, and I don't know a whole lot about it. All I know is that I know Netflix has a live-action adaptation coming out, let's see, Friday the 21st, and if my math is right, I think that's on this day. So 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, no, Thursday. It's coming out Thursday. Okay, so by the time this episode is out, then the Netflix version of Three Body Problem, or Three Body, whichever they're calling it, will have been out for a day. However, there's another adaptation that you can find. It's on Viki, which is an app I don't have, but my dad has it, that has all sorts of different Asian and I think some Pacific Island TV shows on it. That's a streaming app. And it's also on, it's either Paramount Plus or on Peacock. I found it. It's just called Three Body. And it is the Chinese adaptation, which was done, I think, last year, or released last year. And that's done, I think. I think it's done. And I caught the first episode. And part of what they were talking about, I think they might have mentioned it. I mean, I was laying prone on the bed. I was stoned and proned. I wasn't boned, but I was entertained watching this Chinese adaptation of this Chinese book, the adaptation called Three Body. And in it, they talked about string theory, and I don't think this is any kind of spoiler territory here. Possibly light spoiler, but I don't think so, because I didn't even really get into what the heck is going on in this story. It was still setting stuff up, but one of the details of the setup in this fictional science fiction story was that physics is not real. Further, physics is only real insofar as one believes it's real. So the story that I consumed in that one episode was getting at this whole concept, similar to the concept of gods in the Neil Gaiman book. For fuck's sake, what is it called? This is going to bug me if I don't find out. I've got the book right behind me. Let me take a quick water break and look. American Gods. I won't. I'll save my water break for a few minutes from now. American Gods treats. Well, gods exist as far as belief. What am I trying to say here? Belief is a force that manifests gods. Okay. Well, Three Body in that one episode I saw was applying that to basically everything, and perhaps the basis of everything in terms of science being physics. And physics only existed because you believe in it. And I guess some research unveiled that physics is but a reflection of your belief. And that's part of a detail I'm going to get into here in a little bit. But part of, if I understood what was going on, again, I was stoned, proned, unfortunately not boned at the moment of watching it. I believe they mentioned string theory. And in essence, in a very small kernel, in a very small soundbite summary of what string theory is, string theory posits, conjectures, because it's still just a theory, that everything is music. So let me take that water break, gather my thoughts, and we will get into it. I'll be right back. And I'm back. So let's start a long, long time ago. I had this idea, I don't know how long, like for a long time. Let's say maybe early teens. Tweens. I had this kernel of an idea that started to grow that everything is vibration. And at this point, I had not and yet encountered string theory. That would be sort of in my later, mid to later teens. And it sort of just worked in concert with this idea that I had. I don't know why. I don't know where I came across it. But I had this idea that everything in the universe was vibrating, which I'm pretty sure it is. And that was it. Just sort of like energy vibrating. And I've mentioned pretty frequently on this show my sort of explanation for stuff that we may regard as like paranormal, supernatural. I don't necessarily think that it's always just a trick of the mind, because there are always it's too coincidental. Meaning it's too coincidental to be coincidental that people for a long time have consistently picked up anomalies that we can't quite yet replicate and measure and thus label in recordings. Energy, heat, visuals, sound. We pick up anomalies. Sometimes we refer to things as like ghosts and shit like that. And I am not so bold as to outright say, well, that just doesn't exist. Well, that's just a trick of the mind. Necessarily, inherently. Well, that's a mistake. I think we know that there's stuff that we don't fucking know. These are called unknown knowns. We don't know. There's some things we know we don't know. And then there's shit we haven't even conceived of yet. So those would be things we don't even know. We don't even know that we don't know. All right? And I forget who it was. It was like Lilith Fair. Was that her name? Liz Fair, the musician. She believes in, supernatural stuff. She believes in the existence of these things that we call supernatural, but she has a great term for it that I really like, which is future science. Future science. You take technology that you and I take for granted now in a time machine to the past, show it to someone, and they may think it's magic. It's just magic. Well, Matt, what is magic but future science, okay? So anyway, going back, a long time ago, for a little over half my life now, yeah, because I'm 36 now. Anyway, everything's vibration. I had this idea. And then come to find out this thing called string theory. But before I get into that, wait, let me see here. So there's this thing called string theory, but there's all sorts of stuff. String theory is tied to sort of quantum physics. And we're going to get into that in a minute. But I just want to go on record and say I think it's pretty cool how particularly as researchers advance in quantum research, how they are making discoveries that reflect truths that were held thousands of years ago by ancient philosophies such as Taoism. Tao. So in Taoism, spelled T-A-O, Tao, but it's pronounced with a D. In Taoism, I've done an episode on that. That's not what this episode is about, but here's what relates. In Tao, everything is viewed as qi, or spelled Q-I. Everything is qi. And qi is, what is this? It's a central concept of Taoism. It refers to the rhythmic energy that constitutes each and everything, literally everything. If you want to take Star Wars terms, it's the Force. The Force is qi. It's a rhythmic, vibrating, living energy, life essence, and it permeates everything. Rocks, air, you, me, everything, stars. It's all qi. So energy and matter are one and the same. Thus, all people are actually qi itself. So we're all, stardust. This is Taoism. This is when the fuck did it even start, man? History. How far back does Taoism go? I know Confucius was a Taoist, I believe, and there's Lao Tzu. What are the years? Oh, wow. 370 BC. So going back to the BC time, we've got this idea of the Tao in China, okay? And then, so we've discovered that with quantum physics. We're all made of basically the same kind of shit, though we come in different forms, shapes, sounds, sizes. We're all made of the same shit, way down, okay? And then furthermore, we've got Buddhism, which is your mind, your experience, your lived experience is but a reflection of yourself, of your mind, and that there is no self, so on and so forth. Science is kind of finding theories and then proofs that basically reflect this idea that goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, way before the Large Hadron Collider. Okay? So going back to my idea that everything's music, time passes. I somehow stumble upon string theory because I've been an online person for way before it was like cool and the normal common thing. I was on the internet a lot, an early adopter. And string theory is, as I understand it, put in simple terms, is, let me break it down like this. String theory, how do I explain this in simple terms? As I understand it, and of course it's more complicated than this. Let's focus on the human body, okay? The human body is made up of a lot of different stuff, but for the sake of simplicity, let's focus on organs. The human body is made up of organs, and yes, of course, other things, but simple organs. Organs are made up of tissues. Tissues are made up of cells. You follow? Cells are made up of molecules. Molecules are made of atoms. We know this. We can prove this. Atoms are made up of subatomic particles. We know this. We proved it thus far. And atoms are also made of 99% empty space, and they do not touch. Atoms do not touch each other. So we're floating, vibrating electromagnetic 99% empty space. Your body is that. Everything you're touching and feeling is that. But so what are the parts of the atom? We've got the electron zipping around, blipping in and out all around in this electron cloud around the nucleus. And the nucleus is composed of these subatomic particles, and of which an electron is a subatomic particle, smaller than the atom. The nucleus is made of protons and neutrons. Okay, we know this. And then there goes even smaller. So protons and neutrons are considered, I think it's called a composite particle. And this would be a subatomic particle, okay? But then there's, beyond that, elementary particles or like simple particles, which are quarks. There's like lots and lots of different elementary subatomic particles. So what's smaller than the proton and the neutron? Well, there's the electron. An electron is considered one of these like elementary ones, okay? Because conventional thought is that it's not made up of anything else. It just is what it is, inexplicably somehow. It's like the most fundamental elementary kind of particle, the electron. But then the protons and neutrons are made up of smaller pieces called quarks. And there's other different types of particles around the size of quarks. And I've done an episode on this show about those, how there's these quarks and everything are considered flavors, quote unquote flavors. And one's called like charm, stuff like that. It's pretty wild. And conventional thought says, okay, so protons and neutrons are made of, for sake of simplicity, let's just say quarks. Just note that it's more than just quarks, okay, in terms of what exists, what's on the full menu. Protons and neutrons are made of quarks. And then those quarks and electrons and things that small are made of nothing else. It just is. It stops right there. That's what conventional thought says. Enter string theory. String theory posits, in the simplest way to explain it, that there is something smaller than electrons and quarks, those super duper small elementary fundamental particles. Okay? String theory says that inside those little particles is an infinitesimally smaller particle, which is a string of, let's call it chi, a string of pure life energy that vibrates like the string on a guitar, on a bass, on a violin. When a string on a string instrument vibrates, it creates a sound. It creates these vibrations that we perceive as sound. And different vibrations create different types of sounds on the instrument, right? String theory says everything is made of these little strings that are all the same kind of itty-bitty element. Let's call it chi. Why not? It's my show. I can call it chi if I want. And these different strings vibrate at different frequencies. And these different frequencies beget different types of quarks and electrons and hadron particles. Is that a subatomic particle? I'm not entirely sure, but I know for sure quarks and electrons. So these little tiny strings way deep down vibrate and then create these quarks, these various types, flavors of quarks, which then create these various protons and neutrons, which then create these various atoms, thus various molecules, thus various, elements onto cells, onto tissues, onto organs, onto human beings. Everything you experience, everything in the universe, way, way, way down has inside it a little string of energy. It may be, open-ended or it may be a loop, but it's a little string that vibrates at different frequencies. So everything in the universe, potentially posited within string theory in general, everything in the universe is music. We're all vibrating. It is vibration. It is pure energy, or as Tao is divine, or as Qi is defined, a rhythmic energy that constitutes each and everything. Shit that was talked about in 300 BC, okay? Everything at its root is just this force that vibrates in different sounds, that creates different elements, that creates different types of matter. And this is what we experience. This is what we call life. That's string theory. Now, is string theory proven? Not quite. So I'm going to take another sip of water, and then we'll do this little summary thing I found on space.com. So first, let me get some water, and I'll be right back. All right, my babies, let's get into it. It's one of my favorite subjects. There is this trend, I don't know if you're on TikTok, but there was this trend for a while called "What's Your Roman Empire?" Because girlfriends and wives were saying, my man thinks about the Roman Empire all the time. If I ask him what's on his mind, it's the Roman Empire. And then it was a whole trend, this viral trend of all these men coming forward and saying, yes, the Roman Empire is on my mind most of the time. So much so that it became a phrase. What's your Roman Empire is code for what's the thing you think about a lot? Like a lot. When your mind is just drifting. What's on your mind a lot? For me, it ain't the Roman Empire. I'm not that basic. For me, what's on my mind a lot is, well, Taoism and Buddhism, that kind of stuff. It just clicks. It just makes sense. You know, I don't feel like breaking it down. This isn't a fucking therapy session. This is a podcast. What's on my mind is string theory. String theory is my Roman Empire. Well, the concepts related to it and the questions that it opens up. It's my Roman Empire. It's what's on my mind a lot, and it has been for over 2 decades now by this point. So I found this article on space.com, last updated on May 18th of 2023, written by, or it says references. Written by Charlie Wood and Vicky Stein. What is string theory? String theory might be the theory of everything or a flawed framework for theoretical physics. This is a pretty extensive article, but since this episode's run along quite long already, we're going to stick to this little breakdown, this little FAQ section they have answered by an expert. It says, we asked Nick Geiser, a theoretical physicist at UCLA, a few frequently asked questions about string theory. Nick Geiser, a theoretical physicist, PhD candidate in theoretical physics at UCLA, blah, 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 blah. We don't need to know all that. Let's get into the FAQs, frequently asked questions. First question, what is string theory? String theory is a collection of ideas in theoretical physics in which fundamental building blocks of nature are not particles, such as the point-like electron, but instead strings. Imagine microscopic wiggling rubber bands. String theory is primarily a theory of quantum gravity, which elegantly combines the theories of theories of gravity and quantum mechanics. Physicists have been searching for a theory of quantum gravity for nearly 100 years. Moreover, ideas from string theory have been used to solve problems in mathematics and other fields of theoretical physics. So, in many ways, string theory is a language that can be used by theoretical physicists to solve problems and to investigate the mathematics of the universe. Now, there's not just one string theory. If memory serves right, there are 5. So, string theory is like the umbrella term for these 5 different versions of string theory that all kind of fit gaps that each one alone leaves. And altogether, they are formed together in this thing called M theory. I believe M stands for membrane. And I've not read about M theory enough to really wrap my head around it, but it's got something to do with possible multiple universes, so on and so forth. It gets pretty wild, but that is made up of string theory. And these 5 different string theories all require, theoretically, a 10-dimensional model, okay? So you and I, we exist in 3 dimensions, and we kind of experience a bit the 4th dimension. The 4th dimension is time, okay? But you and I, we're 3-dimensional beings, width, height, depth. We perceive these things, all right? And a little bit of time. We perceive that a bit, but not that well. We only get a shade of an outline of that. But with string theory, it says there's at least 10 dimensions altogether. And then there's one theory that says, I believe it was either 23 or 32 dimensions. So there's a lot of theoretical dimensions, theoretically. Let's keep going. Who invented string theory? String theory was discovered by accident! In 1969, Italian physicist Gabriele Veneziano wrote down a formula describing the scattering of 4 strings. The now famous Veneziano, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, amplitude. Veneziano was trying to describe the physics of particles like protons and neutrons, not strings. In the following years, Physicists around the world began to unravel string theory from that first formula. The full picture of string theory has become clearer over the following 50 years. There were several bursts of new ideas and deep insights in the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, and string theory is still an active field with thousands of researchers around the world. Next, has string theory been proven? Well, it's in the name, theory. No. No experiment has definitively proven string theory to be the fundamental theory of nature. However, the ideas of string theory have passed countless theoretical and mathematical tests over the last 50 years. Pretty impressive as far as a theory goes. Fundamental physics is a long game. Einstein first predicted gravitational waves in 1915, and they were first detected by the LIGO experiment, LIGO experiment, in 2015, 100 years later. Future particle physics experiments, gravitational wave observatories, or cosmological measurements may offer definitive tests of string theory. And next, how many dimensions are there in string theory? String theory predicts, here we go, 10 total space-time dimensions, but we clearly live in a world of 4 dimensions, 3 space and 1 time. Thankfully, it is not a problem to get from 10 to 4. 6 of the dimensions predicted by string theory could be wrapped into a small, compact shape. These compactified, nice word, compactified dimensions could then only be seen by a large, precise experiment like CERN's Large Hadron Collider. So that's it for the Q&A. I wonder if we can get a quick thing. What is string theory? A framework that physicists use to describe how forces usually conceptualized on a gigantic level, like gravity, could affect tiny objects like electrons and protons, little cuties. In Albert Einstein's general theory of general relativity, gravity is a force that warps space-time around massive objects. It's one of the 4 forces that physicists use to describe nature, but unlike the other forces, electromagnetism, the strong force, and the weak force, gravity is so weak that it can't be detected or observed on the scale of a particle, though it has been observed. I remember when that came out, and I was fucking jumping. I thought that was cool as shit, because I'm a nerd. Gravity is so weak it can't be detected or observed on the scale of a particle. Instead, its effects are only noticeable and important on the scale of moons, planets, and galaxies. Gravity seems not to exist as a particle of its own either. Theorists can predict what a gravity particle should look like, but when they try to calculate what happens when 2 such quote-unquote gravitons smash together, they get an infinite amount of energy packed into a small space, a sure sign, according to astrophysicist Paul Sutter in a previous article for Space.com, that the math is missing something. One possible solution, which theorists borrowed from nuclear physicists in the 1970s, is to get rid of the idea of problematic point-like graviton particles. Strings, and only strings, can collide and rebound cleanly without implying physically impossible infinities. Quote, a one-dimensional object, that's the thing that really tames the infinites that come up in the calculations. String theory expert Marika Taylor, a theoretical blah, 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 told Space.com. String theory turns the page on the standard description of the universe by replacing all matter and force particles with just one element, tiny vibrating strings that twist and turn in complicated ways that, from our perspective, look like particles. A string of a particular length striking a particular note might gain the properties of a photon. Another string folded and vibrating with a different frequency could play the role of a quark, and so on. Just like I said at the top. So that's it. That's string theory in a nutshell. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you stick around for the bonus episode. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Probably going to read some stupid shit on Reddit because I'm already thinking about that other, we need balance here. We need the Tao, the peace sign. That comes from Taoism. We need balance. So we've got all this heady stuff. So I might look up some stupid shit to read on Reddit for the bonus episode. And if you'd like access to that and all the other bonus episodes, support the show at patreon.com/ThatThingWithJames, and you will get access to it. All right. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you theoretically, but probably next week. Bye.